Here it is, Route 66, what many consider the most magical road in the world. We're in Arizona at the Jack Rabbit Trading Post. 66 doesn't start here, of course. It begins in Chicago and goes all the way out to Santa Monica Pier. We're going to follow the entire 2,000 mile plus road. It's still about 80% drivable even today. We're going to explore museums, drive-ins, the great history. The funny thing was, I found lots of Europeans traveling the road from all over the world. I asked them if they had seen Red Steinbeck or seen American history, and they said no, they'd seen the movie Cars, the Pixar cartoon about Route 66. It piqued their interest. But they are seeing Americana at its finest. Not traveling the interstates if they can help it, taking the back road, see what true America is like, and learning about the country and her people. The best part of Route 66. Of course, there's many forms of transportation you can use to travel on Route 66. I prefer an RV. Some folks like trucks, cars, motorcycles are great, even bicycles if you got the energy. But to tell you the truth, my preferred form of transportation on Route 66 is a jackrabbit. You know why? They're green, they're recyclable. 10 miles to the carrot, they're perfect. So let's go. Okay, buds. Come along on our adventure, RV adventure, on Route 66, exploring the Mother Road. Let's go, buds. Giddy up. Come on, let's go. We got miles ahead of us. We're burning daylight here. What the heck, you got a strike? Route 66's history helped shape that of America. Commissioned in 1926, it was the first highway to link Chicago and Los Angeles. 66 crosses the rivers, plains, mountains, and deserts of 8 states. Come along for the over 2,000-mile-long ride as we explore its drive-ins, roadside attractions, and most importantly, its people. Americana at its finest. Some call it the most magical road in the world. To find out why people from all over the globe are so attracted to this uniquely American experience, I asked the man who literally wrote the book on it.
Well, for me, it's the incredible variety of visuals, of people, of experiences. It ties into the old car scene, antiques, just cool, interesting characters. People from all over the world come by Route 66, and I get to meet people from Europe and Asia, and Australia, and just all over. It's, to them, it's a way to experience America. A lot of the Europeans have seen America in movies. They've seen Western movies, gangster movies. Then they want to come over and experience it, and Route 66 gives them already a pre-planned, prefabricated route to go across the country. There's guidebooks, there's attractions, there's museums. They've heard the songs. A lot of them have heard the Stones version of Route 66, and that's what gets them interested in coming over here and driving down our Mother Road.
Chicago is the eastern terminus of the world-famous Route 66. Our adventure begins near Grant Park, home of Buckingham Fountain, built in 1927. The park is located on the shores of beautiful Lake Michigan. Jackson Drive was the original US 66 through downtown, but was made a one-way street in the 1950s. To head west today, you have to begin in front of the Art Institute of Chicago on busy Adams Street. There's no monument, not even much of a sign, but here, in the concrete canyons of Chicago, is where Route 66 officially begins. Sometimes old Route 66 parallels the interstate going against traffic. Looking over the small fence, you realize there's not much between you and the big semi speeding east. In business for 66 continuous years, the Ambler-Becker Texaco station is the longest operating station on Route 66. It tells its own story.
Phil Becker worked or owned this gas station for much of his life. He recalls what it was like in the early days.
Well, I worked there for 3 other people before we took it over for myself. And the first gentleman was Basil Ambler, and basically he was kind of my mentor. You know, I was like 13 or 14 years old, and I only lived 6 houses down the street. I'd go over there, and he would give me things to do, and we really had a very good relationship, and I really admired him a lot. That's why it's called Ambler-Becker, because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today.
I only wish the price of fuel was the same today as it was back in the 1930s. The city of Pontiac was named after the great Indian chief. Travelers enjoy small-town hospitality, walking tours, and quaint parks. The city represents what Route 66 is all about and does its best to promote it.
My name is Bob Russell, and I'm the mayor of Pontiac, Illinois. And we have a lot for you to see here. We have the Route 66 Hall of Fame Museum, which brings tourists from all over the U.S. and Europe on a regular basis. We have the Livingston County War Museum, which is just above the 66 Museum. That is over 100 uniforms with stories of each man that was in the uniform. Behind me is the famous Bob Waldmeyer bus. Bob Waldmeyer lived on this bus for part of his 40 years that he traveled Route 66. He brought it here because we're famous for our murals. We have 22 large, beautiful murals that were painted by 150 wall dogs in a 3-day time period. We also have the museum that honors these people called wall dogs. Those are the people that painted the murals. And then just recently opened the Pontiac Oakland Auto Museum. October 31st of 2010, Pontiac no longer exists, and Tim Dye from Oklahoma moved his entire collection here. And it's something it's the only one in the world that honors Pontiac, and it's a beautiful collection. We also have all of 9 Looking for Lincoln sites that tell the history of Lincoln in this town when he worked here as a lawyer. So we have a package that we can put together for you, and you can ride our trolley for free, and all the museums are free. So we want to welcome you to Pontiac.
Lincoln may have been famous for being a prolific reader, but I guess he didn't understand what the word loitering meant. A short side trip across the railroad tracks will take you to Sleepy Funk's Grove. The Funk family has been making syrup here for well over 100 years.
I'm Glada Funk, and the business is Funk's Grove Pure Maple Syrup. My husband and I started making maple syrup here right after World War II. Our children have taken the business over, and my son Michael and his nephew, who's my grandson, Sean Funk, is their partners. And then we have Stephen Funk, my grandson, who also helps out. And so it's pretty much all family.
And some people say this syrup is better than Vermont, so I don't want to start a fight here. But
well, no, I'm not going to go on record saying that.
Okay.
I don't want to get in trouble with my friends in Vermont. But we do have people tell us that all the time, which makes us very happy.
And why do you think it tastes so good? What makes it different?
I don't know. We have we cook it a little past the syrup point, which makes it a little thicker. You can't boil it down too thick, excuse me, because it will sugar. But there isn't anything added, and it's just the concentration of the maple sap. I don't know if it's the soil or just what, that makes it taste so good.
It's the funk.
Must be.
And the funk is a town and your last name.
That's kind of
right?
like...
Okay. Stop by for some funk S-I-R-U-P. It's delicious. The Lincoln Tomb was completed in 1874. Before he left Springfield to take on the overwhelming task of president, Lincoln remarked, "I now leave, not knowing when or whether ever I may return, with a task before me greater than that which rested upon President Washington." Abraham Lincoln left his home of 17 years to serve as president of a nation on the verge of civil war. After his assassination in 1865, he was buried in Springfield's Oak Ridge Cemetery at the request of Mrs. Lincoln. head down the old road out of Springfield to find the really old road near the town of Auburn. The original 1.4-mile hand-laid brick road was completed in 1931. Portland cement, originating in Britain in 1824, was 66's original long-lasting surface of choice. The old Chain of Rocks Bridge at 5,353 feet is one of the world's longest bicycle and pedestrian bridges. The most distinctive feature of the bridge is a 22-degree bend in the middle, a safety feature built in for riverboat travel below. It spans one of the most scenic areas of the Mississippi River. Part of Old Route 66, it has a rich history and was added to the National Register of Historic Places. Now officially in Missouri, we head downstream to the city of St. Louis. Most of the older, more established cities in the U.S. were built along rivers, which provided easier transportation than land-based travel. St. Louis was known as the Gateway to the West. The shining 630-foot Gateway Arch was built as part of the Jefferson Expansion Memorial. It was from here that Lewis and Clark began their voyage of discovery to the West Coast in 1804. Not many people know this, but the arch was actually built to help Lewis and Clark find their way home if they got lost out west. Merrimack Caverns is one of the best known of all Route 66 tourist stops due to owner Lester B. Dill. Back in 1935, he started approaching owners of weather-beaten barns, offering to paint them for free if they would allow him to advertise on the side. He also started an American institution, the bumper sticker. Countless travelers crisscrossed the U.S. with the name Merrimack Caverns pasted to their cars. The caverns were said to be a hideout of Jesse James. The Hooker Cut was once the deepest road cut in Missouri. It was blasted out of the Ozarks in the 1940s to bypass a dangerous two-lane alignment of 66 through Devil's Elbow. The elbow was not named for a highway hazard, but for a bend in the Big Piney River that caused log jams. You can still take a scenic drive over the 1923 Steel Truss Bridge. Southeast Kansas is also mining country. It contains the shortest stretch of 66 in any state, just 13 miles, so you'll have to look fast. Well, maybe not that fast. The Will Rogers Highway Association began calling 66 the Will Rogers Highway in 1935, following the death of the legendary humorist. The old Canatech service station in Galena was purchased by 4 local women who are leading a rebirth on this stretch of the highway. The 1951 International boom truck inspired the Tow Mater character in the movie Cars. Buildings in Galena inspired the fictional community of Radiator Springs. Well, Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore. In fact, we've now entered the great American West. Oklahoma contains almost 400 miles of Route 66. It has more miles of the original alignment left than any other state. The Will Rogers Memorial Museum in Claremore was dedicated to Oklahoma's favorite son on November 4th, 1938. The museum honors one of the most famous and well-loved men in American history. Born in 1879, he was an Oklahoma Indian, a cowboy, an entertainer, movie star, writer, comedian, philosopher, and a world figure during the 1920s and 30s. While flying and writing his newspaper columns in Alaska in 1935, he and famed aviator Wiley Post crashed in bad weather near Point Barrow. Both men were killed instantly. There is more to his famous quote than people realize. He said, "I joked about every prominent man of my time, but I never met a man I didn't like." The Blue Whale of Catoosa is located just east of town and has become one of the most recognizable attractions on 66. The National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum is America's premier institution of Western history. Founded in 1955, the museum collects, preserves, and exhibits a renowned collection of Western artifacts. The museum includes movie star cowboys like John Wayne. There's also an extensive collection of cowboy gear, including custom-made saddles. The American Rodeo Gallery celebrates the history, people, and events of the West's truly indigenous sport. Cowboy hats and boots are required here. The Bowie knife exhibit explains the icon of American character. I'm not sure about the character of these guys. I certainly wouldn't give them knives because you know something bad would happen. The statue of Buffalo Bill represents the West in all its heroic glory and legend. No other figure in the history of the Wild West was as loved and admired throughout the world as William F. Cody. The end of the trail sculpture, created by James Earl Fraser, is one of the most recognized symbols of the American West. It's viewed as a memorial to a great and valiant people. Frederick Remington's Coming Through the Ride depicts Wild West history with cowboys jubilantly returning home from a long cattle drive. The 1930s section of Portland cement east of the town of Hydro is considered to be one of the best drives on all of Route 66. The classic curbs are still in perfect condition. The road crosses fields, woods, and deep gullies. The Pony Bridge across the Canadian River used an amazing 38 small trusses in its construction. Red Rock Cruisers is a classic car, truck, and motorcycle show held on the first Saturday in October in downtown Hinton. It's the only car show I know of with a bit of a ghoulish theme to it. An exciting time was had by all. Elk City is home to the National Route 66 Museum. The highway would never even have made it into the state if it wasn't for Cyrus Avery, the father of Route 66. A Tulsa businessman and highway commissioner, he spearheaded the national committee that created the U.S. highway system in 1926. He championed a Chicago to Los Angeles route that dropped south through Oklahoma for his own business purposes. The new highway would run right past his filling station and restaurant. Without his input, a straight line 66 from Illinois to California would have missed Oklahoma entirely and instead gone right through the heart of Kansas. Avery also picked the now famous double sixes as the new road's official number. In 1926, only 800 miles of 66 were paved. It wasn't until 1937 that the 2,400-mile road was completely paved. Next stop, the wide open spaces of Texas. Surprisingly, Big Old Texas hosts the second shortest alignment of Route 66. From the Oklahoma state line to New Mexico, it's a mere 178 miles, but 90% of the original highway still remains. In 1968, the Big Texan had the foresight to move from its original downtown Amarillo location on Old 66 out to Interstate 40. It's still going strong today. Their billboards advertise you get a free 72-ounce steak, The small print says you have to eat it all in 1 hour. That includes a baked potato, salad, dinner roll, and shrimp cocktail. Record holder Joey Chestnut ate the entire meal in 8 minutes and 52 seconds. Now that's a lot of bull. You can walk off your meal at the world-famous Cadillac Ranch, which was commissioned in 1974. Never actually located on 66, it's still a roadside attraction not to be missed. New Mexico's 465-mile portion of historic Route 66 highlight its beauty, history, and people. Tucumcari tonight, billboards suggest you spend some time in this charming little town, and so do I. Mexican restaurants and classic curio shops are only the beginning of your tour. The Blue Swallow Motel has been serving travelers along the Mother Road since 1939. Guests enjoy a pleasant reminder of what it was like to travel across the USA in the good old days. Beautifully restored rooms, distinctive attached garages, and the fabulous neon display each night make a stay at the Blue Swallow Inn a unique experience. Don't just sit in your room. Outdoor seating in the courtyard encourages you to meet your neighbors from around the world. The Albuquerque International Balloon Fiesta takes place each year in early October. About 740,000 people attended the 9-day gathering last year. With over 600 balloons participating, the event is the largest hot air balloon festival in the world. It's also considered the most photographed event on Earth.
What happened to the bee over there? What happened to the bee? What happened to the what? To the bee.
Over 13,000 years of human history and culture can be found at Petrified Forest National Park. Petrified wood is almost solid quartz, weighing in at 160 pounds per cubic foot. It's so hard, you can only cut it with a diamond-tip saw. Each piece is like a giant crystal, often sparkling in the sunlight, as if covered by glitter. Do not pick up petrified wood in the park. It's against the law. If you do, they have trained dinosaurs roaming the area that will eat you. From the eastern border of Arizona until you reach Seligman, Route 66 closely follows Interstate 40. From here, the old route veers away from I-40 on the longest unbroken original stretch of the Mother Road. The 160-mile drive takes you all the way to the California border. Seligman is the birthplace of the historic Route 66 Association of Arizona. In 1953, Juan Delgadillo built the snow-capped drive-in from scrap lumber. Jokes and tricks were played on the customers, including false doorknobs and squirting ketchup bottles. In 2004, Juan passed away, but his family continues the traditions at the drive-in. Over 50 years later, his small business is known worldwide and preserves the best of the fun days of Route 66. Film director John Lasseter has said in interviews that the town of Radiator Springs in the movie Cars is loosely based on Seligman. You can even get your photo taken with some very famous celebrities while visiting. Of all the stretches of Old 66, this was perhaps the most intimidating, with steep grades, narrow roads, and hairpin curves as you head up to 3,550-foot Sitgrays Pass. In days gone by, some travelers would pay locals to drive their car up the grade for them, or even have their vehicle towed over the top. There's a cemetery just west of the summit for those who didn't make it. In the Grapes of Wrath, Pa Jode looked back at this road from the safety of the Colorado River and compared these mountains to the bones of the country. Don't get overconfident on the way down. It's just as dangerous. In 1915, two prospectors struck a $10 million gold find in Oatman, but by the 1960s, it was all but abandoned. These days, tourists bring gold back into town to spend in the shops and cafes. The most popular stop is the Oatman Hotel. These days, there are lots of people in town, and burros. The famous wild burros are just that, wild, and they do bite. There's usually about a dozen of them that show up in town and wander the streets looking for handouts. These burros are direct descendants from the ones gold miners brought to the area as pack animals. They own the streets. Panhandling can be hard work. California contains about 285 miles of Route 66. A group of pointed rocks on the Arizona side of the river was the inspiration for naming the town of Needles. The welcome wagon is always out here. It's believed to be the same wagon used in the old TV show Death Valley days. Leaving Needles, you'll be heading out into the once feared Mojave Desert. Cadet's Summit was an oasis comprised of a gas station, cafe, and some tourist cabins. There is nothing left but foundations. You can find some back roads to travel in the El Cajon Pass area, but eventually you'll have to get on one of those giant LA freeways, at least for a little while. Welcome to Southern California. It's all downhill from here. I always know I've made it to La La Land when the palm reader signs start popping up. Well, we made it. The Pacific Ocean. Palisades Park is a great place to get an overview of the area. From here, you can get a good look at the Santa Monica Pier, which was originally constructed in 1908. Its attractions include a 9-story Ferris wheel, 5-story roller coaster, and Midway-style games. At the end of the pier is a fitting tribute to Robert Waldmeyer and Route 66 itself. Michael Wallace, co-director of the Route 66 Alliance, wrote, "If any one person most typifies the spirit and determination that keeps Route 66 alive and has put the famous highway back on so many maps, it has to be Bob. He was a poet with a sketch pad. Bob is the conscience of all road warriors out on the old road." Well, this is it, the big finish. From Chicago all the way to Santa Monica Pier, Route 66. What a great trip. I learned a lot. I hope you did too. Now it's your turn to go out and take your adventure on the Mother Road. What are you waiting for? Let's go.